Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes of Fame. My name is Al Gilbert. I'm the Chief Listening Officer for Advisory Options, and I invite you to look at advisoryoptions.net later on. As you know, I love listening to interesting people, and one of the most interesting people is our guest today, Ralph Colunga. He is the Senior Manager of Business Operations, Travel and Expense, and a thought leader in our industry. Welcome, Ralph.
Thank you so much, Al. It's great to be here, and happy 2021 to you.
Thank you. Let's get back to my. Okay. So as I said, you're Senior Manager for Travel and Expense Technology for SAP Concur. Over your 37 years travel career in travel management, you are one of the most respected and sought after subject matter expert speakers, and the winner of 7 MVP awards, plus your recent induction to the Business Travel News Hall of Fame, and not posthumously either.
Yep.
So again, welcome.
Thank you so much.
I always like to start at the beginning. Where did you grow up, and what did your parents do for a living?
Born and raised in San Antonio, Texas. Dad worked he was a civil engineer at Kelly Air Force Base after World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Mom was a war bride. He met her over in Germany, and she pretty much came over after a 3-year courtship via mail. And first time they kissed was when she got off the plane in Corpus Christi, Texas, and they were married for 54 years. So,
God bless him. God bless him.
It was good.
Hey,
good life.
Looking at your LinkedIn profile, I don't see any education. So were you homeschooled and self-taught?
I went to high school, but and then in San Antonio, and graduated high school. But college it was just never in my cards. Both my brothers went to college, and I just decided that was not the pathway I wanted to go. So I chose not to go that way. So that's why there's not much education there. More street smarts than anything else.
Well, you did very well.
Well,
you
thank
did better with your street smarts than most of us did with our college degrees.
I'm not sure.
So listen, you spent 13 years at Advanced Micro Devices before moving on to Cisco.
Yep.
Was it a risk for you? You were there a long time.
The reason I stayed at AMD for as long as I did is that we kept on adding to my responsibilities over the years. I was hired to really manage 4 meetings a year for Advanced Micro Devices, and that as we started growing the meetings department, that eventually became we took over Monolithic Memories, and Nancy Kane Graham, who was head of the travel department, came over and worked for me. And so we had the travel organization then. And then we also took on expense. And then later on, we took on the company stores, the cafes, as well as the fitness center. So it became really so what I was hired to do was, again, manage these meetings and events for AMD. And that evolved over the years to become what was called corporate services. And so it included all those areas of responsibility that I just mentioned there, and so that's kind of how it just kept on expanding. So,
and what was it about Cisco that attracted you?
The actual the CFO was the controller at AMD, and he had asked me several times to come migrate over to Cisco from AMD, and they eventually made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I ultimately, after 13 and a half years, joined the Cisco team, and was happy to have done that. It was a great step in my career, quite honestly, to have done that.
Good. Now, since joining Cisco, may not be a coincidence, but over the years since then, you have received 7 travel awards, plus being inducted into the BTN Hall of Fame. What was it about Cisco that gave you room to grow and innovate?
I think it was a number of things. Al, part of it was, I think, just the timing in terms of the changing dynamics in the industry. When you start thinking about all those all the changes that were starting to take place, the beginning of the internet, the online booking was just coming about, was just coming of age, so to speak. You had, I think back in, what was it, 95, you had Delta coming out and saying that they weren't going to pay the standard commission fees. And then you had the whole thing about paper tickets, the evolution of migrating to paperless tickets, I should say, from paper tickets, and just everything. So I think that there was just a combination of things that took place there. And I think that, Cisco was it was definitely on the cutting edge as it related to trying to do, I think, everything that was pre-cloud. Back then we didn't really call it cloud per se, but I think it was just that migration of trying to evolve evolve the different types of ways we did business. And I think our management, for the most part, was really open to a lot of different tech changes or challenges of the way things were done. So they pretty much gave us pretty much a carte blanche to go do things, and so I think that's what helped. And I also think, Al, it was also a matter of having, I think, the right team in place, and I was very fortunate in that regard to have built teams up and kindly step out of their way a little bit to allow them to go, come up with a lot of different innovative ideas as well.
Well, one of the things I always enjoyed about working with you over the years, Ralph, is that you were always open to taking a meeting. I mean, not every day, but maybe once a year or twice a year.
Sure.
And on the other end of the spectrum, there were travel managers who would say, you know what, don't call me, don't bother me. When I need you, I'll send you an RFP.
Okay.
So what do you say, to those travel managers who say, look, I don't have time to see you, and don't bother me until I have an RFP?
Al, I learned a great deal from people such as yourself, in the industry, and honestly, you've forgotten more than I'll ever know, quite honestly, about this industry. So from my standpoint, it was a matter of learning more. I think being open and willing to listen to other ideas, and not that I would always agree with those ideas, but I think it was really, for me, it was just a real education. When I got into travel, and that was back at AMD when we actually took over Monolithic Memories and bought the travel organization into our group, and then we eventually went CTD and became AMD Travel Limited, and that was a huge learning experience for me. So I was just always willing to say, hey, again, I don't know it all. I never will pretend that I did know it all or know it all, and hopefully I'm learning each and every day. So I would just say to any travel manager out there, of next generation of travel managers, be open and be willing to listen to anybody and everybody who can provide you with some insight.
Yeah.
Value that.
Yeah, I when I get sales calls, I try to take them as well, because I never know where the next good idea might come from.
Absolutely right. Yeah, totally agree.
So one of the meetings that you and I had was kind of funny. I think I came up with a number like, Ralph, if you consider my company, we could save you maybe $250,000 in either transaction fees or identified savings. And you said very politely, Al, in our global travel budget, that's a lunch money nit. So other than, I mean, you're very nice about it. Other than price, over the years, how did you judge value when evaluating suppliers?
I think there had to be initially a clicking of number one, who I was going to be working with, such as yourself. There had to be some sort of connection there, number one, and that I think that's the first step, obviously. You have to sit down and make sure that you're aligned in terms of your thinking, aligned in terms of your goals. And I think for me, it was really, again, could I work with this person and could I get along with them to really, help, ultimately, again, I would be dependent upon, whoever I'm working with to help to deliver on these things. So you got to build that trust factor up. I think is extremely important. And then certainly, not making sure that, you're not, over promising and under delivering. I think that is also something extremely important. When you foster a partnership with a supplier, it's about, again, what can you do, versus what are you thinking about doing? I mean, I can't tell you, there was a large credit card company that remain nameless, I should say, but they would come in, and every year they were building on something new that they were going to be showing us. No, it's going to be grand, and it's going to be this fantastic thing, And I finally, when in one of our meetings, I finally said, "Stop," and I said, and this is when I was at Oracle. I said, "Do me a favor." I said, "Don't tell me what you're gonna do. Show me what you can do today. I don't want to know about your next generation of when this is coming." And because he kept on promising year after year after year, and it was like after 2 or 3 years of hearing the same thing, it was like, "Stop. Just tell me what you can do today. Show me what you can do today, and help me understand that better, and let's try to progress it from there." And I think that's just important.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. So Ralph, reading your history and knowing you professionally over the years, I'd say that your success in travel management can be summarized in two of your own words: strategic partnerships.
Yeah.
So you successfully build partnerships not only between you and your buyers, between you as a buyer and your suppliers, but you also build partnerships between you as a manager and your internal stakeholders.
Yeah.
Not many people have this skill. How did you get so many people to follow your lead?
Part of it was, again, I think I had a knack, Al, for sitting down and building teams, but then I think also putting the right people in the right roles. I think that was something that just in terms of my internal teams. Then it was a matter of going out, and I really learned this lesson pretty much at Cisco and then on into Salesforce, which was, how do I sit down and work with the stakeholders and better understand from them exactly what was important to them, and not so much me presenting what's important to me, but really listening to them as to what is they wanted. And invariably, what we found is that obviously the sales teams, leadership teams wanted versus what the finance leadership teams wanted were on, it's the same planet, different worlds, right? And so I had to try to figure out how do we sit down and align, what it is we were delivering in order to meet those objectives. I tell a story often that I went into a meeting with an SVP at Salesforce once, and I was aghast that they had spent almost $300,000 in ancillary fees, for their teams. And when I went in there and was presenting this data and everything, very, very not so kindly, I would say, the SVP said, "Stop." He said, "Ralph," he says, "thanks for presenting this information, but on $2 billion worth of sales, do I really care?" And he didn't quite say it that nicely, but he just said, "I don't care about $300,000 in ancillary fees. It means nothing, as it relates to in the grand scheme of things on $2 billion of sales." So, that really hit home to me in terms of making me stop and think about, again, what's important to whoever it is you're speaking with, understanding their specific needs, and then as best you possibly can. And then I think just, again, going in and listening, presenting, I think, a compelling story that makes sense, but not something that's not important to these guys, quite honestly.
Yeah, I agree with you again. Listening is so key and much more important than talking. And I think that sort of relates back to the story I said earlier about how I offered like $200,000 in savings, and you said that was a lunchtime nip. So obviously I hadn't listened carefully, but I did later on.
Well.
So over your career, you've managed a diverse collection of commodities. So transient travel, groups and meetings, conferences and conventions, finance and analytics, corporate cards and payment systems, fleet, cafeteria, and fitness centers.
Yeah.
I would have been over my head with any three of those things. What common denominator helped you keep it all together?
Again, it was, as I said before, I think it was hiring the right people and putting them in the right roles. Al, I always look for, it was kind of interesting. When I was at AMD, one of the things and the reason I grew the department, and we went through several different layoffs, during that transition time in Silicon Valley during the ups and downs. And it was rather interesting in so much as the senior leadership that I reported to pretty much told all the organizations, and I was told this on several different occasions, that they basically were given orders that they had to reduce their staffs by anywhere from 5 to 10%, but they were not to touch my team. And part of that was that we took care. I realized very early on, about service, And if you can't service what you sell, which is service, and that was something I would also tell all my teams, then we shouldn't be in this business. And so it was very much one of, we prove our, if you will, our worth to the company by literally delivering upon service, really that excels their expectations. And with that I think helps define your value that you're providing to the company. And so I would also, Al, go in and look at areas that nobody else wanted to deal with. And and it was just, it was kind of those thankless areas that most people try to avoid because they don't want to be involved with food services or company stores and things of that nature. And I would always just plant the seed and say something to the effect of, hey, look, should there come an opportunity for us to consolidate, this service into our area, which is a service organization, I would welcome that opportunity. And that played out very well at almost every company I was at in terms of, so I think to your point, Al, in some ways, many people shy away from wanting to take on more responsibility. But I saw that as a way of growing the organization and growing the teams. And that's pretty much what happened almost at every company I was with in terms of taking on that responsibility.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right again, and you expanded not only the areas of responsibility, but you expanded the innovation within those areas of responsibility. So over the years, you've reported to a number of executives. What are some of the characteristics of the executives that you basically liked the most, that you respected the most?
Oh boy, I work for some great people and great leaders that again gave me a lot of flexibility and trusted in my judgment, and I think trusted in my ability to deliver upon whatever goals or tasks that are initiatives that we set out. Not that we were always successful, we weren't, but certainly we were given a lot of leeway, and I think that working with the senior leadership at various different companies, it's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, I think that it's great that you can have that opportunity to work with the senior leadership, but that can also be you're swimming with sharks. So I think that believe me, I fell on many swords over the years, but it was also it's also one of those great opportunities to get to know the senior leadership. And again, there were so many that I had the pleasure to work with. Some not so much pleasure, but nonetheless, I had the opportunity to work with and learn from. And
Sure.
So I'm very grateful for that opportunity, obviously.
Well, one of your key innovations over the years was to create and manage a global travel program with a single TMC, which was not unusual, but with a single GDS, which was highly unusual.
Yep.
Do you think there's still a need and a role for a global TMC today, given all the technology resources that are available?
I'm not so sure. Al, I mean, TMCs, certainly play an important role within the overall, process and ecosystem, et cetera. I certainly don't want to diminish, the role that the TMCs play. I think it's evolving, obviously, and as we go forward. But I'm not so sure that I'm certainly not convinced that a single GDS is a bright idea as much as I thought it was at one time. But I definitely think that certainly I think it's easier for me to manage a single TMC, hopefully single systems in terms of their reporting, consolidation, things of that nature. So, depending on the program, obviously, I would advocate for a single, global TMC if possible. Now, that said, just as an example, BCD, is the affiliate, or I should say, is the the global TMC for SAP, and they also provide services to SAP Concur from an international standpoint. However, we work with Travel Incorporated to manage all of Concur's, domestic and it's just the Americas, business, Canada and the U.S. And that worked out fairly well, so, again, I think it just depends on the company. I think it depends on the goals that you're trying to achieve. I definitely see the value of moving to a single, TMC partner, honestly.
Okay. All right, one last question.
Sure.
Transaction fees versus subscription fees. The TMCs that I worked for always complained that they were being, particularly in the RFP period, we're being treated like a commodity.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's because you price yourself like a commodity.
True.
You think, again, there are reasons for that, the way GDS can track costs. I get that. But do you think there's a possibility, a future for subscription fees in travel management?
Absolutely. Al, I think with what happened in 2020 and heading into 2021 here, and I think with the shifting landscape, I think in many ways the permanently altered landscape that we're going to be dealing with going forward, there has to be a better methodology, that rather than transaction fees. When you look at the devastating effect this has had on TMCs, as a result of really global business grinding to a halt. And so I think without question, there has to be a different method going forward that will better serve all parties. I mean, it does no good for a corporation to have lost, any type of experienced workforce as a result of layoffs because there's just no business. And so I think that there needs to be a rethinking of how this is going to work going forward, as well as in terms of the overall services that TMCs can provide, a rethinking of what their role really should be and what services they can offer going forward. And as an example of that, I think, with all of the focus now on sustainability, if I'm a TMC and can come in to offer to a corporation, that you run, Al, and say, hey, look, we can take care of your credits for, offsetting carbon emissions and things of this nature. We can provide the full gamut of services, from security to literally supporting of your sustainability efforts and things of this nature. And I can get that all through one group or one organization. I think that would be a way to go. And obviously that means alignment of an expansion of services that TMCs could offer. But if I'm a TMC, I would be thinking about those things going forward here.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of us are going to be doing a lot of new thinking as we move into 2021 and 2022. And Ralph, you're one of the preeminent thought leaders in our industry. So I want to thank you for your time and for your insights.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Okay.
Anytime at all, Al. You too. Take care of yourself as well.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.